Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 3rd of May 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So I hope you all enjoyed yesterday's marathon 2-hour episode, or almost 2-hour episode. It was great to be back in the kind of like refuel seat, so to speak, recording that all for you, and there was a lot to get through, so hope you enjoyed that. Now today we're back to our regularly scheduled programming. There wasn't too many updates over the last 24 hours, but there's a few things that I did want to talk about, a few of my tweets that I put out and some other interesting tweets that I saw today. So we'll start with one tweet that I put out where I basically said, before making an uneducated comment or going on a rant about Ethereum's gas fees, I encourage people to actually read up on how Ethereum is scaling via the rollup-centric roadmap / modular design. And then in the following tweet, I linked to a few different resources there. Now, obviously, loyal kind of like refuel watchers and listeners will already know about this. I don't need to preach to you guys. I don't think you guys would even need to read these kind of resources unless you want to. You can go for it and watch it. One of them is a great YouTube video, about almost 2-hour video from Bankless that goes through the whole modular design and everything like that. So definitely check out those resources if you want to. They'll be linked in the YouTube description. But at this point, you're all pretty much aware of it. I've talked about it for many months now. But I think one thing I wanted to kind of like focus on here was what prompted this tweet. And basically, I put this out because obviously the gas fee spiked really high when there was that kind of like NFT mint, the other side, or NFT mint or something like that. And it spiked crazy. I think it went up to like 5,000 Gwei or something like that. And so for that brief period of time, what ended up happening was that the kind of like layer one fees were so high, and people were like, "Oh my god, it's costing me thousands of dollars to do anything." And it's like, I kind of like look at that and I'm just like, why? Like, I get why people are complaining about this, but like, how are people paying so much attention to, the gas fees that within like a couple hour window, they're able to kind of like spot the spike in gas fees, but they're not able to get onto a layer two, right? Like, they just don't know about the layer twos kind of like roadmap. They don't know that Ethereum has layer twos live today. There are still people who believe that layer twos aren't live, guys. I come across these people all the time. They say, oh, layer two is always 6 months away. It's like, what do you mean it's always six months away? It's been live for like, since Arbitrum went live in terms of like generalized L2s, and even before that, we had like the single purpose app layer L2s as well. They're live and you can use them today. I've used all of them, and I'm sure many of you have used them as well, and they work very, very well. Yes, they aren't the cheapest thing in the world yet, but they will get cheaper. But they work just fine. And then some people say, oh, well, there's not everything on there that's on layer one yet. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, it's going to take a little while to build out ecosystems. But at the same time, if something's valuable to you on layer one and you want to use it, well, then you're going to have to pay the fee to do that, right? And what's always kind of like, I don't know, confused me about people complaining about like kind of like the high fees. And I think this stems from a few different things, but it's kind of like, I don't really see any real world analogies here besides maybe something like utility bills, right? Obviously, people are going to be upset when their utility bill kind of like increases in value because they need to pay for water, electricity, all that sort of stuff there. But and I think people view block space as like a utility or a public utility that shouldn't increase in price too much. Yes, there are some prices increases over time, but they're angry when that happens. I don't think Ethereum Layer 1 block space is that, if I'm being honest. I think Layer 1 block space is a Veblen good. I think that it is more akin to a luxury item than it is for like a public kind of like a public utility or something like that. Because Layer 1 Ethereum is not being designed to be a public utility. The rollup-centric roadmap says that Layer 1 will be settlement and data, and that's what Layer 2s will take advantage of in order to offer that cheaper block space to people. So the way I think about Layer 1 block space is it's like a luxury item, like a luxury watch or something. Like if layer one is kind of like a Rolex, for example, well, then layer two is like a G-Shock or something, right? One of the cheaper brands out there, just as kind of like a crude analogy. So, but like a lot of people don't do that because they, as I said, they think of it as kind of like a public resource. But on top of that, I think that the alternative layer ones has taken advantage of this kind of like information asymmetry and tried to equate their block space with Ethereum's block space, when obviously not all block space is created equal, and Ethereum block space is very, very special. It is the most decentralized and secure block space by far, right? And I'm not counting Bitcoin in this because Bitcoin block space is really only good for sending and receiving Bitcoin, right? At the end of the day, right? It can't do what Ethereum can do. So that costs something. Like if you want to keep a network decentralized and secure, like Ethereum, then you need to limit its scalability. And then obviously there's a lot of demand for that, and there's been heaps of persistent demand for that for years now. And I really do think people need to change their thinking around this into thinking that Ethereum layer 1 block space is for everyone. It's not. Like, I'm just going to be straight up, guys. Like, it's not. It's never going to be for everyone. It already isn't for most of the world. And layer 2s is where it's going to be for everyone. And then even things like layer 3s that Starkware's been kind of like talking about lately and stuff like that. So I just kind of like hope that the narrative and kind of like the thinking from people can change around that. I'm not really betting on it changing because this industry is just full of so many people who just kind of like don't really care to learn as well, which is sad, but it is what it is there as well. But yeah, that concept of kind of like block space and not all of it being equal, that's like a crypto level 100 thing. Like, I don't expect noobs to know this at all, but I do expect people to be more curious and to want to actually learn instead of making these just like really bad and uneducated comments and just like literally spreading misinformation about these sorts of things. And I get the frustration around high gas fees, but at the end of the day, like, let's take that NFT mint, for example. Like, you didn't want it enough, right? Like, the thing is that you shouldn't be blaming Ethereum. You should be blaming Yuga Labs for designing an NFT mint so poorly, where they did it on layer 1. There was no kind of like Dutch auction mechanism or anything like that. They just let everyone kind of like ape in, pardon the pun. And everyone was front run, and then people kind of like spent heaps of money on failed transactions trying to get in, and that's simply because they wanted it more than, you know, another person did, for example, right? Like they wanted to kind of like flip it, they wanted to speculate on it, and that's what kind of like happened there. If an NFT project wants a more equitable distribution, then they should go into layer 2. They should do a better auction mechanism, and they should do kind of like there's not just the Dutch auction mechanism. There's a bunch of other ones. Paradigm has put out a bunch of research around this, but I just don't think you should blame Ethereum for this. Ethereum functioned as expected. Like, Ethereum did exactly what it has been designed to do. The fee market did exactly what it has been designed to do. It functioned flawlessly. It didn't tip over. It didn't, yes, the fees went up, but that was by design. So whenever I see people blaming Ethereum for this, I'm like, no, blame the projects. The projects have other options at this stage. I mean, Yuga Labs could have gone directly to any of these L2 teams, and they would have put a team on them, right? Like, literally a dedicated team on them, because they know how big they are. For example, like I've spoken about Polygon being really great at business development before because they've got a whole team dedicated to it. If Yuga Labs went to Polygon and said, hey, we want to mint our NFT on kind of like a Polygon POS chain or some other kind of solution, can you do this for us? I'm sure they would have turned that around really quickly for them, but they didn't do that. And then everyone blames Ethereum. So just a bit of a rant there on that sort of stuff. Obviously, the kind of like discussion around gas prices is something that's always at top of mind for people. But I think the only way that kind of like changes is if we just stop getting, if people just stop using Ethereum L1 altogether and always using Ethereum L2s, because that's the future we need to go to. And if you want to use Ethereum L1, well, then you have to pay to use it. It's like, I just really don't get it's just so bizarre to me because, like, for example, if I go to like an expensive restaurant and I can't get in because I can't afford to get in, I can't afford to eat there, I don't chuck like a hissy fit and start complaining about it and start calling that restaurant a scam, right? Like, you know what I mean? Maybe you guys disagree with me on this, but like, that's how I think about it. I go and eat where I can afford to eat, for example, right? Or I don't crack the shits if I can't afford, a certain kind of like good or a certain, like maybe I want to buy like something fancy, but I can't afford it. Well, I don't say, oh crap, like that's a scam because I can't afford it. No, I just go buy the thing I can afford, or I save up to buy the thing that I want, right? So it's always been just really bizarre to me that people call something like a scam or call that a rug or say that kind of like it's fleecing users just because they can't afford to use it. I don't think that's the right way to think about it. Now, am I defending Ethereum's kind of like gas fees? Again, like, and am I saying that users, should just make more money to be able to use Ethereum? No, not at all. But I will obviously defend Ethereum's design, its rollup centric roadmap, because I think that is the only way to design a blockchain, the modular design, to keep it decentralized and secure. And that requires Ethereum layer 1 or layer 1s in general to be limited, to be expensive to use. But that doesn't mean that users should have to suffer from that. And that's why we have the layer 2 ecosystem and why I spend so much time talking about that and promoting it and educating on it. And, you guys have heard me talk about this many, many times before, but I think that's just like my general view on gas fees, like in a nutshell, the last kind of like 10 minutes that I've been talking for here. I'm going to stop it there. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of like get that out there. If you disagree with me, just let me know in the comments or in the Discord channel. Like I'm always open to being disagreed with and discussing these sorts of things. If you want an actual discussion, better to say it in the Discord channel, because on the YouTube comments, I mean, I read them, but it's really hard to like kind of like talk, and there's like all this spam and stuff. So Discord channel is better because that lets other people join in and we can kind of like have a healthy discussion. So I'm going to leave it at that on that tweet there. But there was a related tweet here from Toghrul from Scroll, who talked about how different transactions on kind of like a network like Ethereum can have varying impacts on fee market volatility. And this is a great thread if you want more insight into how fee markets work and how, you know, the different transactions, different things people are doing on the network can basically alter the way, kind of like alter the volatility of the fee market, so to speak. So I just wanted to highlight this. I'm not going to read it out because it's a bit of a lengthy thread here, but definitely go give it a read. It was very, very educational. All right, so here, Gal Ron on Twitter shared an article from fastcompany.com with a quote from Epic Games' CEO who said, "The field of zero-knowledge proofs, the idea that you can verify that something happened without receiving any private details about it, I think that's going to be the backbone of a large part of the next century in technology." I mean, I totally agree. I think that ZK or zero-knowledge proofs in general go far beyond scalability. You know, they go beyond privacy. They do so many cool things that and a lot of these things we haven't even thought of yet. I mean, I've talked about Sysmo before, about how you can basically have like zero knowledge proofs of NFTs. So essentially, you can prove to someone that you own an NFT without revealing the address that you own that on. That's awesome, right? That's obviously got to do with privacy, but that's just really, really cool. Obviously, the scalability stuff that a lot of teams are working on now with ZK technology is a very big deal, but it has applications for basically everything. And as I said before, zero knowledge proofs and ZK kind of like ZK stuff is not necessarily new. It's existed in kind of like theory research land for a long time, but it didn't have any real practical applications that people were going to put money behind until crypto. And because of that, we've had an explosion in this sort of stuff. I mean, it's not just Starkware working on this, which Galron works as product at Starkware here, but it's basically every major kind of like L2 team now looking at it, right? And you have the dedicated teams, of course, but I mean, think about it. Polygon's working on ZK, Starkware, ZK Sync, Scroll. You have Loopring. You have a bunch of others out there using the technologies from places like Starkware. And also Optimism and Arbitrum are definitely looking into this sorts of stuff. They're not just saying, optimistic rollups the be all end all. They're definitely looking into that and investing kind of like time and money into that as well. So very cool to see someone as kind of, I guess, respected and as successful as Epic Games' CEO Tim Sweeney here saying this. It's funny because like I think he's had varied opinions on crypto. I think he was bearish maybe on NFTs and metaverse stuff originally, but then he was bullish on it, and now he's really bullish on ZK technology, which probably means he's talked to some of the ZK teams within Ethereum. I would guess, which would be really cool to see kind of like what happens there. But yeah, just wanted to highlight this article. You can go give it a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description. But very cool to see some outside validation of ZK proofs from Tim Sweeney here. All right, so speaking of Polygon, Jaynti, one of the co-founders of Polygon, had just put out a simple tweet today saying, expect the Avail testnet this month. So Avail is Polygon's data availability blockchain. It's basically their version of, I guess, like what Celestia is trying to do, what Data Layer is trying to do. And I think there might be a couple of others out there that I'm forgetting right now. But essentially, they're launching their Avail testnet this month, which is very cool. I mean, testnet usually comes a few months before mainnet, so we should see like a Polygon Avail mainnet, maybe even this year, right? That users can start, or developers can start building on, and then users can start kind of like taking advantage of. But I think this is awesome. I think data availability is going to be that thing that's going to be like a big narrative going forward, especially as platforms like Celestia launch and stuff like that, but also as kind of like the L2 wars heat up, right? I think I spoke in the Discord channel. I don't know if I mentioned it on the refuel yet, but Metis, one of the L2 scaling solutions, they actually aren't technically a roll-up anymore, because in their latest upgrade, they actually put the data off-chain. And as I've discussed with you guys before, the data not being on-chain means that something isn't technically a roll-up anymore. It's closer to Validium, right? Validium is Starkware's kind of like term for something that has proof on-chain but data off-chain. And if you could do this with, I mean, I don't know what infrastructure Metis is using, but like if Metis wanted to, they could put their data on Avail. If any of these solutions wanted to, they could put their data on Avail instead of using a, I guess, like closed group or small group of kind of like validators to do this. They would probably get access, as far as I understand it, to a subset of the Polygon POS chain validators, because they'll be staking Matic in order to become a validator on the Avail network, and they'll be kind of responsible for keeping that data available. So very cool things happening in that space. Definitely something to keep an eye on, and I'll keep you guys up to date on everything got to do with Avail as we know more. So ENS has been having a crazy few weeks lately, and I think it's in large part due to people speculating on, I guess, like the 3 and 4 digit ENS names, because a lot of people don't realize that ENSs are actually NFTs as well, right? Because obviously they represent a unique name on Ethereum. But you can see here, Nick Johnson from the ENS team kind of like highlighted how many records have been broken lately. So May 2nd, yesterday, was another crazy day for ENS with the highest revenue ever of $1.95 million, most registrations 63,000, and most registration years, which is 100,000. And also there's been 1 million ENS names registered now as well. So absolutely crazy growth. I mean, if you contextualize this to April, look at that, right? And it's funny because, like, as I was saying, people are just kind of like speculating on 3 or 4 letter kind of like ENS names, but I think that's totally fine, because it means that the ENS kind of like DAO and treasury gets like a lot more revenue. It gets a lot more awareness and kind of like marketing for ENS itself, which leads to more integrations later on, which leads to just kind of like more adoption of ENS. So I don't care if like it's speculation driving this. I think speculation pretty much drives everything in crypto and drives like most of the adoption. So it's not actually a bad thing. But yeah, this is really cool. I love it. I love seeing ENS grow. I mean, I've been a fan of ENS since basically day one. I mean, they're the absolute best. I rep my ENS name all the time there. But yeah, just wanted to kind of like highlight these stats and highlight this growth from ENS. Very cool to see this. Hoping it continues. But as I said, I think this large spike is due to just a speculation, which is totally fine. But we're going to see if it's kind of like resulting in maybe a material uptick in how many ENS names are registered. And I think more important, like how many people are actually using them as kind of like, and putting them to an address, because you can buy an ENS name and not kind of like assign an address to it. And you just keep it, and maybe you want to speculate on TraderNet. Say you've got like 10 ENS names that you're speculating on. You don't have to tie them to your Ethereum addresses. You can just kind of like trade them on OpenSea or stuff like that. So I'd be curious to see how that trend continues as well. All right, so Vesta Finance. This was a protocol that I first mentioned a few months ago, and I haven't spoken about them in a little while here, but they've been quietly building. And I should disclose that I'm an angel investor in Vesta Finance here, but I did want to highlight them today because they had a good thread here explaining kind of like what they've done and what's coming. So what they've done recently and what's coming next for Vesta here. So, I've been telling you guys a lot recently that a lot of these DeFi protocols, they may be quiet. A lot of people may not be talking about them, but they're still building, they're still innovating, they're still shipping products. And I think the problem is that during bearish periods, like no one's really paying attention to that stuff. I get, like, if you look at your Twitter feed right now, what are most people talking about? They're talking about like NFTs, right? They're talking about kind of like the Yuga Labs stuff, the NFT minting. They're talking about, they're always talking about Ethereum, but like just generally the things that attract most of the attention and most of people's kind of like eyeballs is the stuff that kind of is hot, in a speculative way, right? The innovation stuff is kind of secondary to that. And I think what ends up happening is that people start caring a lot more about the innovation side of crypto and the fundamental side of crypto when the token that they're holding is going up. So for example, if you're holding like the Vesta token, right, you're obviously much more interested in the updates than someone who isn't. And I think that like in general, that holds true for pretty much every project, unless the project is going through kind of like some huge speculative mania. Like for example, a lot of the alternative L1s late last year were pumping like crazy. I myself and a lot of other Ethereum people don't own any of these things, but we were still paying attention to it because we were like, why are these things pumping for starters? Like, it doesn't make any sense, which it didn't, because a lot of them are down a lot now. But also it's just something that captures the attention, right? It's just the media headlines, just kind of like the flavor of the week or the month, so to speak. So I think that happens with a lot of things. So, but if you're interested in kind of like, I guess, reading this thread from Vesta to see what they've been doing, what they're up to, I highly recommend doing so. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But yeah, I just kind of like wanted to highlight that. And this isn't just for Vesta. Like, you should be looking at every project, every kind of like worthwhile DeFi project, because there's a lot of innovation going on. And if you're kind of like not paying attention to it, you might be missing something really cool. All right, so I wanted to highlight this thread from Domothy today, who kind of like had a bit of a satirical thread where they started it by saying, every day it becomes more obvious that TCP IP is simply not going to make it. This dinosaur is holding back progress. We should look for innovative ways to make a single all-in-one protocol that can do everything and just works. Building on top of TCP IP with a layered stack, dumb idea. Now, obviously, this is a satirical take on what people say about Ethereum, because if I read this tweet with kind of replacing the terms with crypto-related terms, this is how it would sound. Every day it becomes more obvious that Ethereum is simply not going to make it. This dinosaur is holding back progress. We should look for innovative ways to make a single all-in-one protocol that can do everything and just works. All-in-one protocol being something like maybe Solana. Building on top of Ethereum with a layered stack, dumb idea. And you can see how this translates directly. And there's kind of like this magazine cover here from Popular Mechanics saying, death of the internet, clogged up, bogged down, and gridlocked. Can the net be saved before it screeches to a halt? Which is hilarious because you could say the same thing of, you could replace this title with death of Ethereum, right? Clogged up, yeah. Bogged down, yeah. And gridlocked, yeah. Can Ethereum be saved before it screeches to a halt, right? You could literally just replace it with that and it would still make sense, which is always funny to see. And then Dominic continued the thread by kind of like, giving a bit more satire here. But yeah, that was kind of like funny there. But then, Polygon kind of replied with, I guess, like a devil's advocate tweet here by saying, TCP IP is a technology protocol. Blockchains are socioeconomic movements. It's possible with 100% credible neutrality. You only need one settlement protocol, but we're far from that. And until that happens, I welcome alternatives, although no one's trying. And I kind of like get this point as well. Obviously, blockchains, as Paulina says here, are socioeconomic movements because of the fact that there's just so much kind of like... so much of a social layer involved in it large part because of the tokens. But at the same time, like, no one is really trying to seriously compete with Ethereum from what I've seen. And I'm going to be honest, if I was to give the two networks that are actually close to Ethereum, like in terms of like design, funny enough, I would actually put Cardano in one of those buckets, even though I think Cardano's design is broken. I think they're closer to Ethereum than something like a Solana or an Avalanche is, and Tezos as well. Now, that's not me saying that I'm bullish on either of those networks. I'm not. I think that they've already lost. I think that they're not going to win anything. But, at least they're closer to Ethereum than something like a Solana or an Avalanche. But as Paulina says here, no one is really trying to kind of like compete with that, 100% credible neutral settlement layer, which is what Ethereum is trying to be. So just a few different takes here, but I wanted to highlight this because it was just funny seeing kind of like how you can replace the internet with Ethereum and get the same kind of result from this, from both this tweet and from this magazine cover. All right, so I had a rather, I guess, maybe I would say 50-50, not unpopular, but not popular tweet where I said Ethereum projects should airdrop their tokens to solo ETH stakers, possibly weighted by time at stake. Solo ETH stakers are much more likely to be aligned with Ethereum's values, mission, and ethos. They are more likely to be active in the ecosystem and in governance. Now, a lot of people took this to mean that that we should only airdrop tokens to solo ETH stakers and no one else, which I guess is my bad on the wording here. So I followed up the tweet by saying airdrops wouldn't just go to solo ETH stakers, it'd just be one group among many, like how Optimism is airdropping OP to a bunch of different groups. The airdrop could also be extended to values aligned staking providers like Rocket Pool. Just some ideas. This is literally just an idea, and it actually was born out of the Discord channel. We were just discussing these things, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll just put a tweet out, get a feel for it. A lot of people hit back and said, this is kind of like just making the rich richer. Obviously, to be a solo staker, the barrier to entry is quite high at 32 ETH. But that's why I said possibly weighted by time at stake. So you would basically reward the original stakers more than the later stakers. Because if you staked in the first few months of the Beacon chain going live, you're pretty much definitely an ETH, like almost an ETH maxi, I would say. Because the Beacon chain went live when ETH was like $600 or something. So it was obviously a lot less to get that 32 ETH back then. And if you staked like from the get-go, like one of the first stakers, you were putting a lot at kind of like risk, and I would say you were basically an ETH maxi. But as I said, this is just one idea like that I had, and I had this because you always want to, I guess, like airdrop tokens to the best possible group of people. I think Gitcoin donors is pretty good, but that's been muddied lately because people are just trying to game the system now. I think the way Optimism did it is okay. There were interesting ideas. It's not perfect, as I've said before. Like, no airdrop's going to be perfect, but I thought that was really, really cool. But I think, yeah, the point of this tweet was that we should look for more and innovative ways to do airdrops. We should look for more ways to reward the kind of like long-lasting community members in in Ethereum and the people who've been around for years and years, rather than kind of like just airdropping willy-nilly to everyone, because not everyone is created equal. Like if you've been around for 5 years adding value to Ethereum in any such capacity, versus someone who's been around for like 3 months, well, the person who's been around for 5 years, 9 out of 10 times is going to be worth a lot more as kind of like someone you want in your ecosystem than the person who's only been around for a few months. So that's kind of like perspective I look at this. But I do get how people kind of like saying, this is really gatekeeping for people who can't even solo stake and stuff like that. And that's why I followed it up by saying, you could also airdrop it to value aligned providers like Rocket Pool. I think the Rocket Pool community, like especially the main community, is an excellent one to get involved in your own community as a project and in your own governance process, because they're super active, super friendly, actually give a shit about like Ethereum's values. And the more people that you can target in that group, the better. I truly believe. So we'll have to see, if future airdrops do this. I don't know of any airdrops that have done this yet. There might be some out there that I'm missing. I think maybe Gnosis Chain did something. I can't remember, because they have their own like beacon chain now or something like that. I don't know exactly if they did something or not. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of like highlight this tweet here, because as I said, it wasn't like popular, it wasn't unpopular. It was kind of like people were on the fence about it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts too. As I said, jump in the Discord channel. Just let me know what you think about it. Love to hear your thoughts on this idea. All right, so we have another Dune Analytics dashboard from Hildobby today. This one is basically called Ethereum The Overview, and this includes historical stats on wallets, blocks, transactions, smart contracts, price, and more. This is really cool. I mean, this is like a little... there's been a lot of dashboards in the past that have tried to kind of like show really cool metrics about Ethereum and stuff like that. And I think I think I like them generally, but I like them more when they're kind of like focused on maybe just like a few key metrics. I like this stuff, like Ethereum price near Ethereum gas. It's actually pretty funny how kind of like these things track pretty cleanly. Maybe not on the absolute scale, but kind of like on the just kind of like eyeballing it here. And then you can kind of like see things like transaction count, the users on Ethereum, I guess the addresses on Ethereum, smart contract creation, all that sorts of stuff going on there, a gas used and gas limit and things like that. So cool, another cool dashboard from Hildobby, who's absolutely killing it, by the way, on Dune Analytics. I mean, you can see how many dashboards they've got here, how many people are kind of like following their dashboards. I absolutely love this. I love the amount of work he's putting into these sorts of things, and I'm always happy to highlight this whenever I see a really cool one. So definitely go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description. Finally here, I just wanted to highlight a podcast that Trent Van Epps did with Kevin Owocki from Gitcoin on Bankless as part of the Green Pill podcast here. And this podcast is basically about the Protocol Guild, which I've mentioned before, and about Ethereum public goods more generally. So definitely go give this a watch or listen, or both, and maybe do it after the refuel here when you're done with this. I mean, this is the last thing I'm talking about. So yeah, maybe do it immediately after this or on your walk or something like that, because it's, as you guys know, public goods are good. I'm basically a public goods maximalist. I think that's an apt description at this point. And Trent is doing some of the best work in this area, especially with the Protocol Guild. So if you want to learn all about the Protocol Guild and how Trent thinks about public goods, then I couldn't think of a better podcast than this, especially with Kevin Owocki being the host, who is the godfather of public goods on Ethereum, right? So definitely go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description, but I think that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.